Welcome aboard, everybody. Dr. Peter Glidden here, your steadfast advocate for health. This is my webinar on gallbladder and gallstones. Everything you needed to know about gallbladder and gallstones. This is the 6th day of September 2017. The 6th day of September 2017. This webinar, of course, will be in the archives moving forward. It is intended for Dr. Glidden subscribers and their guests exclusively, and it is being recorded live. This is a live broadcast. I like to do these things live because it adds a different energy to it than if I'm just recording it and editing it, and where's the fun there? So, thanks for showing up. I'm happy to be with you here tonight. So, as I am wont to say, let's just jump right into the deep end of the pool. I appreciate your time. So, we start at the beginning, right? And the beginning here is we need to know, well, where the heck is the gallbladder anyway? Well, the gallbladder is situated under and behind the liver, and that's where the liver is in the human body. The colored organ right there. It's right underneath your ribs on the right side of your body. A little tiny bit of the bottom of the liver sticks out a little bit below the ribs, kind of sort of, depending on different people's anatomy. But it is in the right upper quadrant of the gastrointestinal tract. The gastrointestinal tract, the upper border of the gastrointestinal tract is right at the bottom of the ribs. So the abdomen starts, technically speaking, at the bottom of the ribs and ends at the top of the pelvis. Scientists, medical people divide that into 4 quadrants: right upper, right lower, left lower. The liver is in the right upper abdomen and a little bit above it. Okay, a little bit above that. Now, the gallbladder sits directly behind that. This is kind of a view from the side. You can see the outline of the liver there, the outline of the large intestine and the colons, and the gallbladder is tucked up behind and at the very bottom of the liver. Interestingly enough, the gallbladder is green. It's green. If you were to slice yourself open and look at the gallbladder, pull the ribs back and look at the gallbladder, it would be green. It's interesting. And it is adjacent to the pancreas. The gallbladder and the pancreas are intimately connected, and connected by drainage tubes. The drainage tubes that comes out of the gallbladder is called the common bile duct. First, it's called the hepatic duct, and then it's called the common bile duct. And it connects right before it enters into the small intestine with a duct coming off of the pancreas. Now, the pancreas's job is to secrete insulin, right? The pancreas makes and secretes insulin, and it also creates and secretes pancreatic enzymes, right? So there are enzymes that the pancreas creates, squirts them into the small intestine to help the body digest things. The bile, as we will find out in a minute, stores and concentrates, the gallbladder stores and concentrates bile and squirts it into the small intestine when it's the appropriate time. And this is right where about those two, the common bile duct and the pancreatic duct, join. They kind of meet up together right before they insert themselves into the small intestine. And they insert themselves into the small intestine at the top of the small intestine, right where the stomach ends and small intestine begins. It's called the duodenum, or the duodenum, tomata, naturopath, naturopath, right? It's called the duodenum. It's at the very top of the small intestine. And remember, the digestive tract of the human being goes mouth, throat, stomach, small intestine, colon, rectum. That's how it goes. And the small intestine's job is to finish the digestive process that everything else has started before the small intestine. Digestion starts in your mouth, your teeth, and the saliva, and then it goes into your stomach, and then it's bathed in an acid bath, and then it gets released from the stomach, goes into the small intestines. And it's the small intestine's job to absorb those digested nutrients into the bloodstream. The small intestine also has a very small role in digestion, finishing the digestive process of the stuff that left the stomach, most especially fats. The small intestine helps the body to digest fats, and I'm going to teach you how it does that in just a minute. Now, so the gallbladder itself, a little green organ, hangs like a balloon underneath and a little behind the liver, and it has a tube that goes from the gallbladder to the small intestine that squirts bile into the small intestine to help the body digest things. Okay, and we're going to come back to this model in just a minute. Now, sometimes when things are just wrong, the bile will start to solidify in the gallbladder and form stones, hence the term gallstones. Now, sometimes the gallstones stay in the gallbladder, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they get ejected out of the gallbladder, squirted out of the gallbladder, and that can be a problem depending, of course, on the size of the stone. Because the bile duct itself, the tube that goes from the gallbladder to the small intestine, has a diameter, and it can expand a little bit. But if the stone is bigger than the diameter of the bile duct, the stone's going to get stuck if it gets squeezed into there. And depending on where in the tube it gets stuck, it can cause a problem. So if it gets stuck before it gets to the pancreatic duct, if it gets stuck in the common bile duct, kind of near the top or at the beginning or in the middle of the common bile duct, then the organ that's affected is the gallbladder, because everything backs up, right? So remember the liver, well, we're going to tell you this in a minute, but the gallbladder's job is to collect bile and then to squirt it into the small intestine. And it does that, but if it's blocked, it's going to continue to collect bile, but it's not going to be able to squirt it out. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That's going to cause a lot of pain. It can cause an infection, and it can also burst, which would be not so good. Medical emergency, you could die. Now, if the stone lodges further downstream in the tube, after where it merges with the duct coming out of the pancreas, well, the gallbladder can start to swell, because the gallbladder is still going to get backed up because everything can't get out of it now, but the pancreas now is also going to be affected. The same thing's going to happen to the pancreas. The pancreas is going to start to swell up because it's clogged. It's like a drain that's clogged. The water backs up behind it. A toilet that's clogged, the water backs up behind it, right? And unless the body can force the clog through, which it can't, then you're going to be in a deep world of hurt. So if you do have a gallstone and the gallbladder squirts it out and it gets stuck, that's either going to be a problem for the gallbladder or a problem for the gallbladder and the pancreas, which is a double whammy, and that is just no fun. So let's talk about bile, because it's important that we understand this if we are to have a working knowledge of how to keep the gallbladder healthy. Okay. Now, bile is a very, 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 very interesting substance. The liver makes bile, and the liver makes a lot of it. It makes about between 600 milliliters and 1 liter a day of bile, and that's a lot. A liter bottle, that's how much it makes. And some of the bile that the liver makes gets squirted right into the small intestine, but most of it gets stored in the gallbladder. But the gallbladder can only store maybe, I don't know how many milliliters, not a lot. So what the gallbladder does is it collects the bile, and then it removes the water and some sodium and some other things from the bile so that it becomes concentrated. You know, it's like if you have a sauce that you're making on the stovetop and you need to reduce it, you need to cook it down. Well, the gallbladder kind of does that with the bile. It removes a lot of the liquid from the bile, making the bile very, very, very concentrated, right? Very interesting how the body does this. Now, when the bile gets squirted into the digestive tract, it does its job, goes into the bloodstream, and gets recycled. It gets recycled. The body recycles bile. It's fascinating. About 95% of it is recycled, and this process happens about 15 times, more or less. Now, I have no idea how physiologists figured that out, but that's what the textbooks say, that bile is recycled about 15 times, and then the body gets rid of it, and it gets excreted in the feces and comes out with your poop. Fascinating stuff. Now, one of the things that the bile does is it helps the body to digest fat, but it's not a digestive enzyme. It's an acid. Interesting. The technical term for this is it's called a salt. So sometimes you may have heard the term bile salt. Well, that's just fancy schmancy chemistry talk for bile. It's a more accurate representation of what bile actually is. It's a weak acid. And one of its main digestive jobs is to help the body break down fat, kind of like soap. You know, if you've got a fry pan and it's got fat on it, you just put water on it. Well, water and oil don't mix. But if you put a little soap on it, the soap is going to dissolve the fat. And the water is going to rinse it right off. Well, the bile does a similar thing. It actually, when it interacts with fat, it creates a little bubble around the fat, which is scientists technically refer to as a micelle, M-I-C-E-L-L-E, a micelle. And this little bubble around the fat molecule allows the fat molecule to be absorbed through the small intestine into the bloodstream. So the presence of the bile facilitates the absorption of the fatty acid into the bloodstream. So you need bile to absorb fatty acids. You need bile to absorb fats. Now remember, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids are essential. Your body needs them. But it's not what you swallow, it's what you absorb. So if the medical doctors have surgically removed the gallbladder, because that's what they do when the gallbladder's in trouble, then from that point forward, your body's going to have a difficult time processing and absorbing fat, essential fats into the blood, essential fats. So this sets people up for stroke. It sets people up for asthma. It sets people up for all kinds of lung difficulties, simply because you remove the gallbladder. Now, you can live without the gallbladder, but you can live without your arms and legs. You can live without your ears and your eyes and your nose, but it's not going to be that great of a life, right? Right. But remember, the medical doctors don't think like human beings think. They think like robots think, and that's very, very, very dangerous. It's a very, taking medical advice from about a chronic health condition from somebody brought up inside of the MD paradigm is an extremely dangerous proposition. And I recommend that you fire your medical doctor as quickly as possible. But I digress. Now, the bile also contains byproducts of red blood cell breakdown because, you know, red blood cells are made and then they do their work and then they atrophy and they go bad. And when they die. When the red blood cell dies, goes bad, the body gets rid of it. and it uses the bile to do that. The bile also, you ready for your head to explode? The bile also transports cholesterol out of the body. Now, I think we just opened up a can of worms, right? Because medical doctors will tell you that you need to keep your cholesterol as low as possible, and that's a red herring. It's a false flag. We know that there's no relationship between high cholesterol and heart disease. It doesn't exist. There have been hundreds of research papers published about this and numerous books written about it. But the simple fact of the matter is that most medical doctors, they don't stay current with the research. They listen to what the pharmaceutical rep is telling them instead of paying attention to the published research. It's hard for them to think outside of the box, right? So they believe that cholesterol is the antichrist, but they haven't thought it through. Because the human body, from the holistic perspective, knows how to fix itself, wants to fix itself, is regulating its affairs all of the time. So the body will get rid of excess cholesterol if there is excess cholesterol. Which begs the question, why do we need to pay any attention at all to cholesterol levels in the blood? Well, from the medical doctor's point of view, you need to pay attention to those things because the body is a bag of biochemicals waiting to break. The body has no inherent wisdom. The body has no inherent intelligence. The body just doesn't know really what's going on, and it's the doctor that knows best. And this is the single biggest philosophical difference between the MD approach and the naturopathic approach, the holistic approach and the allopathic approach. The MDs believe that your body is a bag of biochemicals waiting to break, and it's the doctor's job to orchestrate a hostile takeover of the body. So when the gallbladder is funky, they remove it. And they developed a technique years ago with laparoscopic surgery that you can punch a hole into the abdomen, go in with this little surgical implement on the end of a camera. You can snip and clip the gallbladder and pull it right back out. Easy breezy lemon squeezy, you're in and you're out. Maybe you have to stay a day in the hospital, maybe not. Before they developed this technique, to remove somebody's gallbladder was a big deal because you had to make an incision that was about this long. It was a long incision in the abdomen. You opened up the entire abdomen. That's tricky because now all kinds of infections can happen, right? Secondary infections from the environment of the hospital, right? And it was a big recovery time. I mean, you're in the hospital for a week, maybe more. It's not pleasant. But now with this easy breezy lemon squeezy laparoscopic technique, they're in and they're out, bada bing, bada boom, that'll be $10,000, please. Yeah, you can live without your gallbladder. Let's just get in line. Now, sometimes the gallbladder gets so funky, so bad that it does need to be yanked. But most of the times, I would argue no. Because remember, the body wants to fix itself. It's the doctor's job to support the body's ability to fix itself. So there's a lot of very interesting paradoxes here that, well, not paradoxes, but they're very interesting. The topic of gallbladder health and bile kind of sheds light on how the medical doctors think, and it does not paint them in a very good portrait of them. But that's par for the course, okay? So again, there's a mechanism that the body has built in to manage its cholesterol levels. Now, who are you going to trust to do that, the body or the doctor? Oh, you'd be smart if you trusted the body. Sometimes the stomach acid will sneak out of the stomach and get into the beginning of the small intestine because that's just what happens. Another function of the bile is to neutralize the stomach acid that does that. It's fascinating. The checks and balances that the body has built into itself are unbelievably remarkable. And the more that you study anatomy and physiology, if you don't believe in a divine presence, then you're a knucklehead, quite frankly. All right. So that's bile and the gallbladder. Now let's get into the nitty gritty. Gallstones. All right. Gallstones are bad. Bad dog, no biscuit. So inquiring minds would like to know what causes gallstones. And by the way, let's go back to the little laparoscopic surgery. Let's just yank the gallbladder. If you have a little bit of gallbladder pain, let's just yank it. Well, if you do that, did that surgical technique do anything at all to alter the process, the metabolic process that was present to make the gallstones form in the first place? No, it did not. You don't get gallstones because you have a gallbladder. You don't get gallstones because you have bile. You don't get arthritis because you have joints. You don't get asthma because you have lungs. But this is not how the medical doctors think. They just want to take it all out. Take it out, boys. You don't need that heart. We'll give you the pig heart, for goodness sakes. So, inquiring minds want to know what causes gallstones. Funky bile. That's a medical term, by the way. Well, what causes funky bile? The funky liver. Because remember, the liver makes bile. The gallbladder just stores it. The liver makes bile. So if the bile is so funky that it's going to form gallstones, it's because the liver was unable to make healthy bile. Couldn't make healthy bile. So it made unhealthy bile, which then coalesced into stones. So what is it that makes the liver funky? Well, there's a lot of things that can make the liver funky. Environmental toxins, right? Pesticides, ionizing radiation, pollution, bad things in the air, bad things in the water, bad things in the food, right? But mostly, it's not enough essential nutrients. The liver has just run out of the stuff it needs to make healthy bile. It just ran out of it. Your joints, body runs out of stuff to keep the joints healthy. The joints get arthritic. The body runs out of stuff to keep the heart its normal size. The heart expands. The body runs out of the stuff to keep the skin healthy. You get eczema, psoriasis. The heartbreak of psoriasis. Not because you have skin, not because you have joints, not because you have a liver, but because the body ran out of what it needed to keep that part of the body healthy. That's the first thing we must consider. So, now remember, here's the liver. The liver is an unbelievably complex organ. And, you know, there is a saying in naturopathic medicine that all things being equal, when you're treating a patient, if you don't really know what to do, then just help the liver. Because if you help the liver, you're going to help everything. And it's easy to help the liver. Why? Because the liver can regenerate itself. It's the only organ that can do that. You can remove 75%, more or less, cut it out, yank it out, put a bullet in it, stab it. It's dead, it's gone, and it'll grow back. It's the only organ in the body that does that. So, this would seem to make the statement, right? Therefore, the enlightened physician must assume that if the liver can regenerate itself, then it must have a very unique ability to keep itself healthy. And it does. So helping the liver to have healthy bile is not that difficult. Because the liver wants to regenerate itself, wants to be healthy. How do we do that? Easy. We give the 90 essential nutrients, because that's what we do. This is holistic medicine. This is not reductionistic, fractionated nutrition. We give the body everything that it needs in doses appropriate for its body weight. And then we give extra selenium, because the liver loves selenium. Selenium is to the liver what calcium is to the bones. Selenium is very important mineral for the health of the liver. So we give selenium. And we give good herbs, liver and gallbladder support after we've provided medical nutrition. Now, this all goes without saying that we've eliminated the 12 bad foods. I'm not going to waste time with that. You know all about that. So don't eat the 12 bad foods. Fill the body's nutritional tank up, the 90 essential nutrients appropriate for body weight, extra selenium. My recommendation, Longevity's Ultimate Selenium, 1 bottle per 100 pounds per month, not to exceed more than 4 bottles a month. 1 bottle per 100 pounds a month, not to exceed more than 4 bottles per month. And the good herbs, liver, and gallbladder support, 1 bottle per 100 pounds per month. 1 bottle per 100 pounds per month. And then we do a beet juice program. Now, this program I learned from Dr. John Bastyr, who Bastyr University of Naturopathic Medicine was named after. He died a few years ago in his 90s. And when I was in medical school, in the naturopathic medical school in the mid-80s, John Bastyr was probably in his mid-80s, right? Or late 70s, something like that. But he came and gave a number of lectures, and I was lucky enough to sit at the feet of the master. And he didn't do the 90 essential nutrients. He didn't do selenium. He might have done some herbs, but his main therapeutic intervention for a funky liver was beet juice, fresh squeezed beet juice. Fresh squeezed beet juice stimulates the generation of new liver cells. Now remember, it's only smart to give the body the nutrients that it needs to make those new liver cells when you're stimulating it to do that, right? Right. So here's how we do it. You get some organic beets, you get a juicer. You cut the roots off of the greens. You don't use the greens for the juice. Cook with the greens. Do whatever you want with the greens. You rinse the beet off, and then you put the beet in a juicer, and you squeeze out an ounce of juice, an ounce of beet juice. So week number 1, 1 ounce of fresh squeezed beet juice a day for 7 days. Week number 2, 2 ounces a day for 7 days. Week number 3, 3 ounces a day for 7 days. Then you stop. Now you can mix the fresh squeezed beet juice with any other juice that you want to make it taste better. I personally like carrot, green apple, beet. Some people put ginger in it as well, ginger root. Just use a little bit. It's very strong. And you have to drink the juice right after you make it. You can't make a quart of it and stick it in the fridge and just use it every day. You have to drink it as you make it. Drink it within 15, 20 minutes of making it to get the most bang for your buck. And the juicer that I recommend is the Champion juicer. It's the easiest to clean. Okay? So now be advised, when you do this program, your urine and your stool invariably at some point will turn red and you'll think that you're bleeding. You're not. It's the beet juice. So don't go to the emergency room in the middle of the night. Oh my God, I'm bleeding. Okay? But this is what we do in order to have healthy bile. So I would do the good herbs for 3 months. And I would do the beet juice program for the first month. Maybe you can do it for 2 months, but it should not be necessary to do it more than once. And the beet juice program is a good thing to do once a year. Anyway, just once a year anyway. Just do it. All right? Pick a month and do it. Okay, good. Now, ostensibly, when we have healthy bile, now, thank God, there's healthy bile. The liver is making healthy bile, and it squirts the healthy bile into the digestive tract, and it squirts the healthy bile into the gallbladder. If there are stones in the gallbladder, the healthy bile will dissolve them. Hallelujah, and pass the hat. Beats a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. Not bad. So that's how we do it. If we have, you have gallstones, but it's not yet an emergency, You're not in pain. There's no stone that's been jammed in one of the tubes, one of the ducts. You still have a window. This is what we do. We aggressively make healthy bile, keep our fingers crossed, and hope that the healthy bile dissolves the stones that are in the gallbladder in time before one of them sneaks out and jams things up. Okay? All right. Now, sometimes it's too late, and a stone gets in there and jams things up. Now, the technical term for this condition is called cholecystitis. Sometimes it's referred to as cholelithiasis, but nonetheless, it's a stuck gallstone somewhere between the gallbladder and the small intestine in that duct, somewhere, right? It got jammed up. That's a medical emergency. You can die if that's not attended to. Now, sometimes we can intervene before the surgeon steps in. And this is how we do it. You get homeopathic Berberis vulgaris in the 10M potency. And I like homeopathyworks.com. Buy this at homeopathyworks.com. The pill size would be number 40. The bottle size 2 dram. The potency 10M. 10M. You take 2 pellets orally every 30 minutes. 2 pellets orally every 30 minutes until the pain subsides. That's how you'll know the stone has passed. We're attempting to help the body pass the stone. We're attempting to help dilate the ducts that the stone is stuck in, reduce inflammation, and facilitate the passage of the stone. So, homeopathic Berberis vulgaris in the 10M potency, 2 pellets orally every 30 minutes. You start with that. 15 minutes after you pop the homeopathic pellets, you take the Good Herbs Kidney and Bladder Support, 1 teaspoon, and you do 1 teaspoon every 30 minutes. And you start at 15 minutes after the homeopathy, okay? 1 teaspoon, half an hour later, 1 teaspoon, half an hour later, 1 teaspoon, so forth and so on. Same thing with the homeopathy, but you're staggering them. First you start with the homeopathy, then you do the Good Herbs. Next, Cal Toddy, 1 tablespoon every 30 minutes, and a couple of ounces of fresh squeezed orange juice every 30 minutes. And you start that 15 minutes after the Good Herbs. Kidney and Bladder Support, and the icing on the cake would be the Good Herbs Lymphatic Support. 1 teaspoon every 30 minutes, and you start that 15 minutes after the Cal Toddy. Okay? So you're doing homeopathic Berberis vulgaris, 15 minutes later, Kidney and Bladder Support, 15 minutes later, Cal Toddy, 15 minutes later, Good Herbs Lymphatic Support, 15 minutes later, you go back to the top and start all over. And you do this while you're in the ambulance. You do this while you're waiting for surgery or whatever. And you keep your fingers crossed, maybe you won't need the surgery. Okay? Okay. And you know, better to not let it get so bad that it's all of a sudden an emergency and you got to freak out and do something about it. Okay? Now, there are some holistic practitioners who recommend a gallbladder flush. I do not. And here's why. See that? That's a gallbladder that was actually removed from the human body. See how big those stones are? That's a centimeter ruler underneath it. Not pretty, right? So the average one of those stones is 3 millimeters in diameter. And there's no way that that's going to fit through the common bile duct. So if you do the gallbladder flush and you have no idea how big the stones in your gallbladder are, you could squirt one out and then it's going to get stuck. It's probably not a good idea. I mean, you can go outside and play in the traffic if you want to, but it's probably not a good idea. You can juggle with sharp knives if you want to, but probably not a good idea. right? Because we don't want the stones to get jammed up and stuck. So there's a kinder, more gentle way to deal with this. Okay? Here's how you do it. So you go to an imaging center. You have an ultrasound done to the gallbladder on an empty stomach. You don't need anything before you have the ultrasound. The ultrasound will tell you whether you have stones or not. It'll measure how big the stones are. All right? So if you go and you say, oh my God, I have gallstones, here's what you do. For 2 months, you eliminate the 12 bad foods. You take the tangy tangerine, the Beyond Osteo powder, the plant-derived minerals, the Prohoba Omega appropriate for body weight. You take 2, 3, or 4 bottles of muscadine grape caps every month. And you get the good herbs, liver, and gallbladder support. You do 1 teaspoon 2 times daily. And at the beginning of the 2nd month, you do the beet juice thing. You continue this, and then you do the beet juice for 3 weeks. Okay? Now, 2 months has gone by. You go back for an ultrasound. You see if the stones are smaller, or if maybe they're gone. Sometimes they turn from solid stones into sand. Okay? So, if the stones are much reduced in size, and if the biggest stone is smaller than a 1/2 centimeter, and they can measure them on the ultrasound, a 1/2 centimeter, you keep doing this until the biggest stone is smaller than 1/2 centimeter, 1/2 centimeter max. Then you can do a flush. And here's how you do it. All that preparation first, 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 months. And then on one night, you do this. 2 hours before you go to bed, you drink an ounce of Cal Toddy and 2 ounces of fresh squeezed orange juice. An hour before bed, you repeat that. You use the Cal Toddy. We're using the Cal Toddy because it has a lot of magnesium in it. Magnesium helps the common bile duct to relax. Then, 30 minutes before bed, you soak in a hot tub with a pound of Epsom salts dissolved in it. Epsom salts, magnesium sulfate. More magnesium in the body coming in through the skin, helping the common bile duct and to relax. Okay? Then, you get out of the tub, dry yourself off, and you have previously put together 2 ounces of Whole Foods Spectrum brand olive oil mixed with 4 ounces of fresh squeezed grapefruit juice. You get a grapefruit, you cut it open, you squeeze out the juice, you put it in. You can use more than 4 ounces if you want. And you put it in a shaker bottle and you shake it. You don't stir it, you shake it. Put some ice in it because it's much better if it's cold. Trust me. You shake it. Then you get into bed. You sit up in bed. You drink it down. You try not to barf because it's nasty. All right? And then you lie down on the left side of your body. It helps the gallbladder to eject its contents better. And you go to sleep. Now, the oil in the body is a fat. It stimulates the gallbladder to squeeze and eject bile. But it's not just a little bit of oil, it's a lot of oil, all at once. So the gallbladder is going to be squeezing like nuts to get rid of the stuff that's in it, to give the digestive tract more bile. And in the process, pump out the stones. All right? Now, you can do this for 3-4 nights in a row if you want. And then you go back and have another ultrasound. Oh my God, no more gallstones. Okay? Now, I have some colleagues that say it doesn't matter how big the stone is because if you do the program correctly, the common bile duct is going to expand and it's going to pass through, kind of like having a baby. Who could have thunk that a baby could have come out. I mean, how does that happen? Well, I'm not gonna risk it. I'm just not gonna risk it because I don't want to die. I certainly don't want to have emergency surgery because it didn't work. So, get an ultrasound, not an X-ray, not a CT scan, not an MRI, an ultrasound. See if there are stones. Do the program. Have another ultrasound. Keep doing the program until the stones are tiny. Then do the flush. All right? Now, by the way, we use Whole Foods Spectrum brand olive oil because, number one, it's a small bottle. And number two, it's nitrogen sealed. So there's no oxidation happening, or very little oxidation happening to the oil while it's in the bottle on the shelf. It's the only brand of olive oil that I know that does that. And, you know, once you open it up and you pour out 2 ounces and you slug it down, then I would throw that bottle out. Get another one if you're going to do it the next night. That's what I would do. Some people put the remainder of the oil, they'll like take the little plastic top off the Spectrum thing and they'll stick one of those vacuum seal corks in it and suck the air out like you do with wine that you haven't finished, you haven't drunk all the way. You can do that. Refrigerate it. That's why we use the Spectrum brand, because it's the least oxidized of over-the-counter olive oil. Makes sense? It's a one-shot deal. It's not going to hurt you. Okay? So that's how we do it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you learned something. I certainly did. The little birdie tells me it's time to go. I appreciate your support, and spread the word, please, because everybody needs to know what you just watched. I hope I made it a little entertaining. This was a live presentation. I think we did pretty good for a live presentation. Appreciate your support and your trust. Remember, we must all hang together, or most assuredly we will hang alone. The medical establishment is stacked against us nonetheless. People are suffering needlessly simply because of a lack of knowledge. And now that you know this, it's up to you to spread the word. Thanks so much for everything that you do. Couldn't do it without you. I am your steadfast advocate for health, Dr. Peter Glidden. Live long and prosper. See you next time.